Good morning, everyone. We'll give everyone a few more minutes to sign on before we get started.
Hey, Fran.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
A little bit windblown from all the
Uh,
wind that we have up here, and I'm concerned, because we're close to like West Milford, Greenwood Lake, and it's really today's going to be a bad day if they can't get those fires under control. So
Scary stuff.
I think they're going to have to start evacuating some people from their homes, which is kind of scary. So,
Hard to believe in New Jersey, right?
yeah,
I
we
mean,
have two of them going on, like one in
yeah,
Bergen County on the Palisade, and I haven't heard too much about that, but this one is like into New York now, so Greenwood Lake into the New York side of it, so it's scary. Good to see you.
good to be seen. Did you go to National at all?
I did. I'm like so tired
Yeah. How
because it
how
it
was
was
the atmosphere?
the atmosphere was a little tempered because I feel there wasn't much to really other they had some really great sessions. I have a lot of recordings of really great sessions. But as far, the settlement has not been approved yet. So any questions to do with that were kind of like put on hold because there's nothing they could really say at this point until it happens other than the time had passed for the opt-in and out on the class action. That was October 26th or 28th. The DOJ is not restricted to that time frame. And so they're just waiting to see what's going to happen. But I think there's going to be they've already, with Katie Johnson stepping down and, you know, uh, they're making plans to go with the settlement. I think New Jersey really has us a little, you know, regardless if it gets proved or not, we're now under the law, which covered basically everything the settlement agreed to. So we have to go with that. But anyway, good morning, everyone. Last week, Adona had promised that we would be having a speaker on um, solar panels and maybe how that might affect the roofs and things on some of the homes, the sellers we represent or that buyers are buying. But what happened was, unfortunately, he couldn't make it today. So we are just going to have an open forum. If you have any questions on Dotloop or on any of the new law with the SEPA that the leadership that's on here today can help answer. We will certainly do that for you. Um, if you do have an issue ongoing with Dotloop, the files have been set up better than ever. I can tell you that. Um, Based on the area that you're in and what your primary, and you can pick the MLS that you need to do your listing on when you're doing a listing. There have been one or two forms that have been mysteriously disappearing. So Jonah has been in touch with Dotloop and they are supposed to be doing an analysis, a study of what seems to be happening there because I know I was using the buyer loop for almost like 10 days in a row, and all of the forms were there, and then two forms were missing. So if you are missing documents, there is a way of finding them in other parts of Dotloop, but I'm not going to be doing any screen sharing today. If you think you're missing a document, you can touch base with me after the meeting. I can try and help you navigate your way through it. Eventually, we are going to have a session on setting up your own loops should you decide to do it. But I can tell you that I would strongly recommend that you use the loop that's already set up so you don't miss any of the required documents, right? We want to make life as easy as possible. And those documents are required for two reasons. Either they are required for legal reasons, or they are required for our E&O insurance. And to make sure that you're compliant with everything, um, everything is marked required in the files that you use the appropriate loop for. So we tried to set it up to help everyone in moving forward. So I will entertain any questions that you have. You can just unmute yourself and speak up. We don't really have a big crowd here today, only 13 people right now. So we're just going to go through any questions you have.
Hi, I'm Ina Singer. I'm working with Gary. I have a question. When you are representing a listing and several offers are coming in at one time, how do you
Mhm.
set up your loop so that the offers that are not acceptable or that will go by the wayside, you don't confuse your loop with the buyers who are coming in and making offers?
Okay, so you have a listing and you have multiple offers on the property, is that correct?
Yes, yes,
Okay. Or you have, you're hearing from multiple buyers that want to see the property. The
exactly.
best thing to do is to set up, I know, is to set up the buyer loop for each buyer until the buyer is accepted, and then you can archive those loops that are not viable after that is done, and then you can transfer the buyer who is getting the home into the loop. Now, this is if they are all your own buyers, okay?
Right,
If you're getting offers from other people, you might want to set up a file 123 Main Street offers so that when they're sending you offers, because you have to keep unaccepted offers for a period of time. I don't know, Mr. Dorso, what's the period of time?
Uh, Originally, it was 12 months. I heard recently that they reduced it to 6, but I say 12.
Okay. I'd say, and once it's put into Dotloop, so if another agent forwards you their uh paperwork, ask them to send it to you in a PDF so that when you open it, you're not creating a whole another loop with the address of the property. Okay. So ask
okay,
them to send you your offers in a PDF, and then I would put them all into that file for that property. 123 Main Street offers. Scan them in, load them into that file, then they are kept there. You don't have to worry about, keeping them in your computer. They'll be stored on Dotloop. And then when you have your accepted offer, you can load that into your listing file and make sure you have all the appropriate documents for that. Does that
okay, thank you.
explain it? Okay,
Yes, thank you.
okay. Right. Um, Anybody else?
Fran, is there, excuse me if this was discussed 100 times before today, is there like a KV Core for Dummies kind of place where I could
Oh,
go?
well, yeah, Rob, the managers are having KV Core training for 3 days at Greater Bergen Realtors. Remax LLC rented out the space. So you might want to email Liz at LLC and ask her if you could. It's 3 full days. It's tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. It's a
Course.
lot. So I'm going, I think Fran Tack is going, Adona is going, and I'd be more than happy to share. I know that we did have one of I have a new agent in the office who's very enthusiastic, wants to get going. She found a place on KV Core to sign up for the KV Core leads. So what I did with most of the agents in my office, I was able to teach them how to set up their profile, to know what their KV Core phone number was if it was coming through. And then I'm telling you, on Bold, even since they did Bold Trail, they changed it to Bold Trail. I think it's powered by KV Core. I put in a listing 2 weeks ago on a Saturday morning at 9 o'clock in the NJMLS. By 9:40, my kit assets, okay, your kit assets are all things that are downloaded automatically. Your photos are downloaded from the MLS. Your postcards are created. The just listed social media. You can easily, if you don't like, how you put your photos into the MLS is how they come out on those forms. So what I did was you can swap them out really easy. All the extra photos are loaded into KV Core. It really works so easy. And then I just printed my brochure right from there. And you change what you want to change. You can change the text on it if you want to change it. You can save it and get ready to do a just sold on it. But this is a big hint. Those of you that are using it, if you're gonna do a just sold postcard, and you can do that, you need to, if you want other photos from the listing to be on it, you have to do it like a week before it closes, okay? Because otherwise you're just gonna get the main photo and that's it. Because most of the MLSs take down all of the other photos once a property closes. So if you want it to be nice to really show some other things in the house, you can do that. You can do that. You do it, just get it ready the week before. You don't need to send it out. You can download it, and it's a printable form. You can either download it to have it printed somewhere, which I think they use Express Copy, but we have a local printer by us, so I've used them before. And or you can just print postcards on hard stock. It really is a great product instead of spending money on something else. Now, as far as the CRM goes, that's what I want the training for, and how to do the drip campaigns, because I really haven't been able to learn that, myself. So 3 full days, I'll let you know how it goes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I feel really bad that we didn't have the solar guy here today, because people were expecting to hear that information, but I'm not well versed in that. So I know
But is everybody, does all do the other MLSs, Fran, do you know, do they have the solar panel form that they put in? They all use the same forms, right?
we use a New Jersey MLS, the solar panel addendum from New Jersey
Right.
Realtors. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then does everybody know that they're subject to the solar company's approval, right?
Yes. And he was supposed to go over all of that. Like, for example, some of the questions that come up with the solar panels are, okay, well, what if you have to redo your roof? Who is, uh-oh, Fran, can you mute? Fran, Marinelli, can you mute everyone and then I'll unmute? Okay. Who's responsible for taking those solar panels off and then putting them back on so that you can redo your roof? So we were hoping to get all of that kind of information today. Some of them are leased, some of them are purchased and owned. So, and there's how it works with the cost of the electric that you're generating from your solar panel, and then all of that. I don't really have any idea. I do know, I can tell you this, if you are selling something that has solar panels on it, give some extra time, because the solar company that has to approve anything that they have to approve, they're very difficult to get everything done. You need to get the paperwork done really quickly. I don't really see how you could do a 30-day closing with the solar and having to get that all in line. I don't know. Has anyone else had any other experience with that?
So yeah, I had a listing that had solar panels that were owned by the homeowner, and it sailed right through.
Yeah, that's easier if they're owned, but if they're leased, it's a
Yeah.
different situation.
I've had a couple where they were leased, and what I would suggest is that the first thing you do after getting the listing is contact the solar company, get all of their required paperwork to do the transfer, ask them about some of those questions, because the reality is that every solar company is going to have different regulations or paperwork. Everything's going to be different depending on the company. So you really need to know who you're dealing with, and because Fran is right, it could add, I had one that added 6 weeks to the transaction. I also had one where the buyer was fully committed and the solar company rejected them. So they got a mortgage, they were approved for the house all in, and the solar company said, no, you don't qualify. So
Right.
that was a real eye opener. But having said that, the best thing that you can do for your clients and for your own sanity is as soon as you get that listing, you get all that paperwork, get the frequently asked questions and stuff like that, and it'll make life a lot easier. It's still going to be a pain in the neck, but it'll make it easier.
The other thing that I wanted to mention is Adona had designed a new commission statement in Dotloop. I don't know if, and I think she did load it in several of the files, because sometimes you're being paid by just the seller now, sometimes you're being paid by the buyer also. So it kind of splits up the compensation. So when you're getting ready to go to the closing, the title companies, I've heard, are missing some of the things and charging everything to the seller. And now sometimes it's not all being paid by the seller, right? So try to intercept and make a note when you're sending your commission statement, and maybe attaching it to your email, and in bold print, put, please note, the seller is responsible for this part of the commission, the buyer is responsible for this part of the commission, and send the statement along with it. Because it could, look, I had somebody last week on Friday, they got the closing statements for, I think, Wednesday this week. Monday's a holiday. And, it wasn't our company, but it was someone else. She said the title company charged it all to the seller. So now the seller gets the closing statement and they're having a heart attack, because they're not paying the entire compensation. So try to be aware of that. If you are you receiving compensation from both parties? Perfectly legal to get compensation from both parties. Also, I just got back from the NAR conference. We were talking a little bit about it in the beginning, and I have a whole bunch of recorded sessions that I know that we're going to, try and put 1 or 2 of them out there via like a Zoom one day. They're 1-hour sessions that will be beneficial for all of the agents to hear. I went on this morning to preview a few of them, and they're still being approved. They were recorded, but they're still being approved by NAR. They have to look at them before they decide to send it out there for the entire membership to see, because they know that we're going to use these videos to educate everyone a little bit on different topics, a lot of different topics. So hopefully, I only have them for 30 days. So I'm hoping that they put them out there soon, and we'll try and pick up 1 or 2 different topics that will really be helpful for everyone in their business. I think everybody seems to be moving through the buyer agency agreements now. You understand that, you have an addendum. So if you have to make changes, you can make changes to that. And also now we have the cooperating compensation form for the tenant's agent to the landlord's agent. So, in South Jersey, they were a little customary to the landlord paying the compensation, but that when that hit this up here in North Jersey, it was not the same situation. And so, we did have the state make an appropriate form for that. And so that the purpose of it is, in order to get paid, you need an agency agreement, either with the seller, the buyer, or with the other agent company, with the other company. You know, you need an agreement in order for us to really collect that compensation. Try on your rentals, only certified checks, you know, when you're doing rentals. Anyone else have questions, or you want to just call it a day? And
Take a question on the buyer agency agreement.
sure.
So my understanding is that before you show a property, you have to have a buyer agency agreement with your buyer. Is that correct?
Yes. Now,
Okay.
let me just clarify that. Two steps, okay? If you are representing the seller and you get a call on the property, as the listing agent, you can show that buyer the property because your responsibility is to show it for the seller. So you don't need to necessarily get that signed to get them when you're the listing agent, to get them to get there. Then you can develop your rapport with them and see if you can get them to work with you. Okay. But if you have a call from a buyer and they want to see something else, or they're being referred to you, you need to fill out that buyer agency agreement, because then you're just going to develop that relationship with that particular buyer.
Okay, and if you have a buyer that specifically says, I am only interested in seeing properties where the seller will pay the commission, and there's a section in there which specifically asks how much the buyer is going to pay you, how do you deal with that?
Well, if the buyer is only interested, well, you're gonna have to put, I would still put 3% on there, okay? Because unless you have an amount in there, you're not gonna be able to collect the compensation even if the seller is paying it. But then if you go to, and then I would reference paragraph 17. And paragraph 17, you can write that this buyer has chosen to only see properties where the seller is offering the compensation. So prior to any offers being made, I will let them know that the seller is paying the compensation, and then the buyer will not be liable for any compensation. I mean, there's all different ways of approaching it and how you want to do it. And you need to be able to explain to that buyer that you need to have something in that section. Otherwise, you cannot collect the compensation even from the seller, right?
see.
Because, yeah. So you also want to write in section 17 that the buyer's agency addendum can be amended at any time, you know, so that they know upfront, and then you could use the addendum to amend it. You know, I had the agency agreement set up, the buyer agency agreement set up like that for my buyers. I had 3% there, and then I had paragraph 17 explaining, you know, that if this is what they want, the seller to only pay the compensation, they won't be liable for the compensation. But before every transaction where I submit an offer, I'm going to let them know what it is. So I did an addendum for every offer I submitted, and I gave it to them with the fact that the seller was paying the compensation. And again, to make them feel comfortable, I reiterated, the seller is offering 5 apples for the compensation on this particular transaction and address above, and therefore you are not liable for any compensation for this property or offer should it get accepted. You know, it's about developing that security for them, making them feel comfortable. And I mean, I had to do it for 8 different offers for the one buyer. I had a different addendum for every offer, and I had a different file for every offer, even with my buyer, because it's too confusing to try to archive documents, then reload required documents. And they're like, oh, well, some of them have already signed the forms that are required. You know what? When you're sending them those forms, they're going tap, 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 tap to do the signatures. It's really not a big deal, right? It's easy. And if you use the autofill function on Dotloop, it's very easy to complete the file that you need to send out to them.
I have a question on that autofill. If you have a contact list where you're using perhaps the same buyer over and over, and you enter that in the profile as the buyer for a property, why doesn't it autofill again with the address and all the pertinent information on that particular buyer for a new property that perhaps you're going to?
For each file down below on the bottom, you have to enter the person.
Right?
Okay, so you have a file for 123 Main Street, you've entered that person, now you're on to the next file for them. 659 Ackerman Avenue. I enter my buyer again as a person. I add the person with their email address.
Right.
Now, I guess we could ask Adona if you have them in your contact thing, how come that's not populating their address and everything? But it will autofill the documents with their names as long as you add them as a person.
Right, I see that. I just, the
Yeah.
other information that you have to fill
Enter
in.
like their address and stuff like
Right,
that.
exactly.
I have a suggestion. I don't know if it's correct, but when I deal with that situation, I grab the file that they've already, or I already started, even if it hasn't been signed, and you can click on just the document. So let's say the CIS, let's say the purchase contract, even, you click on it on the side, there's like little, boxes you can check off, and then you can make a copy. When it's in the little dots beside it, it says make a copy, and then you can make a copy as a template or as a PDF onto the next loop. So that way everything is auto-populated. The only thing that you have to change, let's say, is the address, and all that information, and possibly the price, but everything else can remain the same.
Okay, I've never tried doing that. So, if
It's
you
a
want
time
to try it,
saver.
just make sure you correct all of it.
Yeah,
whatever
correct. I mean,
the difference in the offer
it's a
is.
little tedious, but it's less, you can get a lot more loops done that way. All you have to do is make extra sure that you go through them. through all
Okay,
the
great.
details.
Thank you, Jessica.
No problem.
Jessica, right? Yep.
Yes.
I have one question.
Who's-
This is Bobby.
Hi, Bobby.
All right, so the co-broke wants to show one of my listings. And then calls me up and says, Bobby, I got an emergency, my son's sick, I have to take him to the doctor, whatever reason, legitimate reason. And it's an agent that I have a past relationship with, a good relationship. I said, Bobby, can you show your listing for me? Because I have to handle this emergency, which I would gladly do. But then this buyer agency agreement, I mean, is there anything that we have to do to cover ourselves other than just a courtesy type agreement with another agent?
So you're showing not your listing, but somebody else's buyer to another listing that you don't have a relationship with the buyer.
No, it's my listing. It's my.
Oh, it's your listing? You
My
don't
lis-
have to create an agency relationship because you have an obligation to the seller to show that property.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Yep,
Yep.
thank you.
And it's very nice of you to help your fellow agent out.
I wouldn't do it for everybody, but a lot of agents, I go by shoe on the other foot, if someone would do it for me, I'd gladly do it for them.
Yeah, I mean, we need to help each other. So we are competitive but friendly, right?
Yep.
And I think that's really important for us all to remember. I had one of my agents got berated by another agent yesterday for giving feedback, and then the agent decided to call me and harass me. I was like, oh, this is like really getting crazy here. But you should be treated with respect and treat everybody else with respect. That's as easy as it gets.
So let me take the other end of Bobby's question there, which I think you started to respond to, which was, if it's not my listing, if another agent has a buyer and for
Mhm.
whatever reason he's not able to show the house to somebody and he calls me and asks me if I could show the house to his client. And to help him out, of course, I would say sure. Now, do I need to have a buyer agency agreement with that buyer or no?
That is a very good question, and I do not have the answer to that. I will email the state and try to get that answer, because I do not have the answer to it. I mean, I think that I don't even want to assume something, so
This is
Yeah,
Jen.
my guess would be that I would not need to, but
Yeah.
just making sure.
yeah, I would think the same thing, because you're not going to be the one writing the offer. You're only accommodating a showing, you know.
Right.
But
Right.
I'll verify that with the state. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing as I'm thinking it through. It's like we're doing another agent a favor. We're not really representing the buyer at that point. We're just accommodating a showing.
Right. Well, I will pose the question to them and just ask them. And I'll get back to Adona on it, and I'm sure she'll share that answer next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so why don't we wrap it up for today? Thank you for joining, and watch for the Mastermind text message and email for next week. And I'm sure that it will pick up with a great topic, and it's really good. These conversations help all of us, and the leadership appreciates you being here and bringing forward your questions. All right, everybody can have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
My friend, thank you.